Right, English learners, now we're going to move into lesson 3 of understanding poetry. Right, I would say to you, if you have not yet viewed lesson 1 and 2, please start it there before you can view this one. Welcome back to our English lessons presented by Mel Lichuti. Just a recap, a brief recap. We have been dealing with structural elements and unpacking structural elements of poetry, and then now today we are going to look into imagery, figurative language, and sound effects. Remember, we are building a framework that is going to assist us to thoroughly analyze poetry, how to approach poetry in terms of analysis, and then ultimately responding to poetry essay or poetry contextual questions. Right, not forgetting that the structure refers to the physical and grammatical composition of the poem, and it is the frame on which the words are built, right? Hence I say we have been now looking into building the framework that is going to undergird or provide us with a blueprint in towards understanding or analyzing poetry. Now you ask yourself questions as such as, why is the structure frame this way? Like we have said, how does the frame affect how the manner in which the reader accept the meaning that is being conveyed and so forth. But now we are now going to look into the meaning, right? To truly capture meaning, a reader must also be able to accurately identify the poem's message, and we rely on imagery, right? Imagery is one, not only one, but one of elements that would help us to understand meaning. Of course, imagery, tone, mood, and language, which translate into diction, which I've said is choice of words. All of that help us now to find the embedded meaning in a poem. So we move from the physical appearance now to the meat of the poem. We have been studying the skeleton, the concepts that build the skeleton, but now we are going into the meat. We are adding the meat into the skeleton that we have to say now, in essence, how then does a learner understand the meaning that is being conveyed by the poet? We start with imagery. Says that poets uses imagery or language that appeals to the senses to help readers visualize what they read. It creates the picture in the reader's mind. So imagery simply refers to language that appeals to the senses. Remember, we've got your 5 senses, which is the sense of touch, a sense of taste, a sense of smell, a sense of sound, and a sense of sight. So therefore, imagery helps strengthen a writer's description by providing physical details that enables the reader to better imagine, imagery coming from the word image, to better imagine, right, the scene or understand the speaker's feelings. Imagery can further contain figurative language, but does not have to. By adding imagery to a particular object, person, or scene, the writer simply heightens, right, the importance of the detail and helps to add either a negative or a positive value to it. Now, what you need to ask yourself as the reader always is that, always ask yourself this question: how does the imagery relate to the meaning of the poem? Example, an imagery that is used through simile, through metaphor, how then do they relate to the central idea of the poem? Now let's go through examples so that you are able to understand imagery. Remember, what you need to always recall is that imagery speaks to the 5 senses, and it may be used creatively by different poets, of course. An example of sight, where we speak about seeing, it says hundreds of tiny. By mentioning hundreds and tiny, you are starting to imagine the number 100, and then of tiny yellow blossoms dotted the plush green middle, right? So this is what we see. You visualize seeing 100 tiny what yellow. So this is an imagery of sight. We have an example of an imagery of sound where an author may, a poet may use onomatopoeia, which are words that are used to represent sound, such as a whistle, a hiss, clap, a ring, and so forth. Horns honked, which is a sound, and sirens screamed across the night. So we have honked, we've got screamed. This translates to the imagery of what? Of sound. Then we move along, still on imagery, the imagery of smell. The scent of cinnamon apples wafted through the air. Not forgetting that the word waft actually means to pass or cause to pass gently through the air. And then, of course, an example of taste. The tart cherries pocket my mouth as a sweet crust melted against my tongue. Now you can just salivate from just reading this sentence because you can just want to taste, right? So this sentence creates an imagery of what? Taste. An imagery of touch. Splinter spot scraped my leg. So you can imagine a leg that is being scratched or scraped by a splinter spot. This now create an imagery of what? Of touch. So imagery speaks to the 5 senses, right? So always remember that. And what is also important is that the manner in which the sentence is constructed, it prompts you to have an image in mind, either of a sense, either of a smell, either of sight, either of touch, and so forth, like we have just unpacked the examples. Then we go to language learners, and this one is crucial, which are figures of speech. You need to study them, you need to understand them, you need to know them so that you understand their effectiveness, not their definition. Now, figurative language communicates ideas beyond the literal meaning of words. There's a video in one of my old videos here in this channel. Please go through it, where I go through figures of speech. I unpack a lot of figures of speech. Please go through that. Here, I'm just going to go through them again. Right, and pardon me for that, learners. To say that figurative language communicate ideas beyond the literal meaning or of words. For an example, we have your simile, we have your metaphor. These two, we call them comparisons because they are figures of speech that are used for comparison purposes. So you need to know what is being compared in this form. And then, of course, with a simile, either we are going to use like or as. And then with the metaphor, it's just an implied or direct comparison without using the words as or like. And then we've got what you call a hyperbole, which is nothing but an extreme or an extended exaggeration, where the poet exaggerates, may exaggerate the state of mind, may exaggerate the appearance of a person, may exaggerate how dirty the place is to say by this it is the best in the world. This is a form of what? A hyperbole, because it exaggerates how best or the quality of the product, right? And then poets also use personification. Personification, again, is one of the comparisons, but however, what is different from how is it different from metaphor and a simile is that here, that is where an inanimate object is being given a human quality, where a poet speaks to or speaks about a non-living thing by addressing it as a human being or adding a human quality to it. So that is what we mean by personification. Again, I'm going to urge you to go through my lessons where I unpack the figurative language to the latter. That will make much more sense to you for reinforcement purposes. Remember, here we are just adding meat to what is that you need to know when you analyze poetry. Right? And then an idiom is an expression whose meanings cannot be understood by simply joining the meanings of the words, right? That is what we mean by an idiom. And then simile and metaphor, we have explained them. My brain is like a cluttered garage. It becomes a simile. But then if you say my brain is a cluttered garage, then that is a metaphor. The distinction here, it's because it has used the word like to compare the brain to a cluttered garage. And then what is important for you as a reader is to identify, to say, okay, it is a simile, but then what is the importance or the significance or the relevance of this figure of speech? What is that the writer is trying to show us? Again, it speaks to imagery. The imagery that comes to your mind, you think about a brain, and then you think about the status of a cluttered garage. Here is a cluttered garage. And then if you compare the cluttered garage to a brain, then that means, how is your brain? How does this comparison of a brain to a cluttered garage help you to understand what the writer is saying? How does this image help you to understand what is going on in my brain? Then you must explain. Now you look into the description or the status of a cluttered garage. What it means, there's no form of organization, there's filth, there's chaos, and so forth. So it's a negative imagery, right? So the writer uses this metaphor is simile to compare a brain to a garage full of disorganized items. This further suggests chaos, confusion, and difficulty finding out what is needed. By comparing the brain to this scene, the writer conveys that the mind is overloaded with thoughts, worries, or information. You see, this is how you get to the root or the nub of what is that the writer or the poet means. You look into the two qualities of things that are being compared and the possible reason for that comparison, right? To say, unlike a brain that is being compared to a smooth as a flowing river, it means that this is a brain that is at peace, because it's when you say that there's a smooth, you are by the river bank and the river is just smoothly flowing, that provides a state of tranquility, because it's just water running through the rocks by the river bed flowing. Now you are comparing your mind to that. It means that the poet wanted to show you that the state of mind is at a peaceful state. But now you look into a cluttered garage. It's nothing but chaos, confusion, meaning that I'm stressed, I am worried, I am confused. And how did I arrive into that conclusion? I looked into the two elements that are being compared and the possible reason for that comparison. It gives me the relevance of the figure of speech. I hope it makes sense. And then personification, we know that personification, when inanimate objects, the poet add human elements to them. The wind danced through the meadow, and my friend's unkind words punched me in the gut. You know, words are not human beings. They cannot have hands to punch. But the word punch, the words hurt the person similar to a person who can hit you with a punch and hurt you physically. And hyperbole, I've told you a million times to stop talking. I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. This is an extended exaggeration. If you say that I've told you a million times, this is just to reinforce how many times I've told you. And then this is just to show the intensity of my hunger, that the way I'm so hungry I could possibly eat a horse. And that is humanly impossible for one to eat a horse, right? And alliteration is the repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning of words. Moses let the motor run for a moment. Sometimes this alliteration adds meaning by reinforcing a sound. What might the sound represent in the sentence above. We need to look into the context of the poem to further contextualize the relevance of the alliteration used. But we know that in essence, alliteration is mostly used to reinforce either. It can be not only sound, but it can also speak to pace and also movement, depending on the context of the poem. And then we also have assonance learners, which is the repetition of the same vowel sound, like your 3 sheep bleed in the dark night. We have that long E sound. Now the question would be, what might the long E sound be imitating in this context? You need to think around those lines, right? And then we can also have what you call the consonants, assonance versus consonance. Now consonance becomes the repetition of consonant sound at the end of non-rhyming words or syllable. All mammals named, some are clammy. A writer may use either alliteration, assonance, or consonance to reinforce meaning, to enhance the meaning, or simply to draw attention to particular words in a poem. Now, in essence, learners, I'm simply saying to you, again, as you read poetry, look for elements such as imagery, figurative language, and their effectiveness. You don't just identify the figure of speech. Go deeper to know the relevance. Why? What is that the writer is trying to show us or to convey through the use of this poetic device or a figure of speech? And sound effects. Sound play a significant impact and role overall in poetry as well. These elements can help you to interpret the meaning the author intends to convey. Once more, I hope this will be a fruitful lesson to your good selves to strengthen your literature muscle. Thank you once more.